Great. So I'm going to zoom in just to keep things. Is that good? Yay, nay?
Yeah, it works for me.
All right, great. So let's just talk about variables real quick.
Actually, can you zoom in a little bit?
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Great, perfect. So how do we declare a variable?
Const let var.
Const let var.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Const let var followed by the variable name. Can anybody tell me the difference between, const, let, and var?
Let allows you to rename the variable.
Oh, sorry. Did someone? So I heard let.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Mic cut out. So let would allow you to just declare a variable and then change it. So like if you were doing some addition, let, I don't know, num equal 2, you could then redefine it as let num equal num plus 2, and then that would change the variable to 4, right? Constants does not allow you to change the variable once you've declared it.
So you're kind of half right there with let. You can't. So if I literally kind of took what you said, you say you can declare let equals age, like 18, and you said then you can let age equal like age plus 2, something like that.
Yeah, that would be an example of how you could.
So I'll let's see it. Let's just console log age and let's see what happens. So so you can't redeclare a new variable age, but you can so with the let variable, you can change the value, but you can't redeclare another variable with the same name. So what you can do, we're using the same variable age and just reassigning it, and that should work. So you can only declare the variable once with let.
Yeah, that's what I meant. My bad.
No, you're good. No, yeah. You declare the variable once. Let. All right, and then I heard const is a value or is a variable that will never change. Or a variable that you can never change the value of. So you can do const. So what's a variable that would never change, like pi or something?
Like
pi.
Your social security number.
Yep, exactly. Like pi.
Pi. Yeah.
Const social security number or social security. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Something like that. So const is a variable that will never change its value. And you can also can't redeclare another variable with the same name. So if I tried to like pi equals, so I'm accessing this variable pi and I'm right here and I want to reassign it to something else like 5. And I'm just going to comment this out up here first. And if I run that, I'll say assignment to constant variable, it's like a type error. So assignment to constant variable. I'm trying to reassign a constant variable, which is illegal to do. All right. And then there's var. What's var?
var is an older way of declaring a variable. It's usually, or I think you said it's not really used in practice anymore,
Yeah, because
or at least not commonly, right?
yeah, it's uh, it's like the older way to declare a variable, but with var you can like var age equals 6, var age equal 10, var age equals 18, and you can just continue reassigning console log the age. You can continue reassigning or redeclaring a variable of the same name. So if I run this, it'll be essentially the last time, whatever value. Yeah, the last time I declared it. So it'd be 18. And that's, yep, go ahead.
Or no, go ahead. Yeah. So quick question, I guess. In terms of like, I guess memory or resource, consumption, right? I believe it's in like Java. There's a way to declare a variable in which you don't know like the data type, so you don't know if it's a string or a float or something like that. In terms of these three examples here, is there anything like that? Like, would using var maybe use more memory versus using constant or let, or are they all pretty much the same?
They're all the same as far as memory. As far as I know, yeah, they're all the same.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And let's talk about variables. What if I wanted to declare a variable but not assign it a value yet? So before we were doing like var age equals const pi equals let age equals. So if I wanted to declare a variable, but not give it not assign it a value yet. Without. Does anybody know how to do that?
When you just declare the variable and then equal null.
Or you can, if you equal it null, you're explicitly saying, hey, this variable has no value yet, or explicitly has no value at all. So the best way, if you want to use a variable but you don't know, if you're not giving it if you're not assigning it to anything, that you can do like let age, let social security, and so you're declaring a variable but you're not assigning it anything yet.
Gotcha.
So I can console log.
So can that be used instead of just setting it equal to 0? Because I've seen like sometimes you just set it equal to 0. Is that?
Yeah, I usually I assign it to a value, and I give it, I assign it to a value in which essentially I'm going to assign it to the specific data type I'm going to be using for that variable. So for like age, this is just, you can do it like this, but generally I like to assign it if I'm going to be using a number, I usually assign it to 0. If the function or at least the instructions allow it to start at 0 or something like that. So I usually try to assign it to whatever data type that variable is going to inevitably be. But you can definitely do it like this. There's like really nothing saying you can't. But if you console log age, it's essentially, it's up here, it's undefined yet. So we declared the variable, but we haven't assigned it a value yet. So it's currently undefined. There's not like from what I know, there isn't a best practice of whether or not you should or should not if you don't know. So if you're like, hey, I have an age, I don't necessarily know the value of it yet. At some point down in my program, I'm going to reassign the age variable to something, but up here right now, I don't know what it is. You can assign it to 0 or undefined is generally like the best practice as well. Like if you don't know what it is. So doing this, let age equals undefined is the same thing as doing that. So does anybody have any questions about variables? All right. Let's talk about data types. So what kind of data types are there?
There's a string.
Strings. Oh,
Booleans.
there's Booleans,
Arrays.
arrays,
What is it?
Objects.
objects,
What's some of those? That's some.
Integers.
I know.
heard integer.
Is
Can
it
someone mute,
integers
please?
or is it numbers?
Yep, so it's number. Yep, number. Uh-oh, what just happened? Numbers. There's some other ones. Whoop.
Like float.
Float is a number. It just has a decimal in it. So there's integers, which are whole numbers, and then there's floats that are decimals.
Gotcha.
And we've got objects. So these are like the main ones. There's also like big int, and there's a couple more, but these are like the main ones you'll see. So with strings, let string. So there's three ways to write a string. There's the single quotes. This is a string with, yeah, this is a string. There's let string 2. Double quotes. This is also a string. And then there is string interpolation, which uses backticks. And why would you use string interpolation over like the other two types? Single quotes and double quotes. What's string interpolation generally used for? I'm sorry?
I'm just thinking like if you, oh, go ahead.
Is it to use quotes inside that or to be able to use multiple strings?
So string interpolation is when you want to insert a variable within a string. So let's go up here. So for example, let's say we have, let's move numbers up here. So numbers, let age equals like 18. So up here, okay. And instead of saying like, for string 2, say my age is plus, age plus something like that. So let's just see what this looks like. Console log string 2. I run that. My age is 18, but I have to use this plus age plus and then have another, quotes. If I want to, so this is kind of dirty. It doesn't look that clean because you're doing like a bunch of quotes and adding plus age plus quotes, period. String interpolation allows you to insert variables within the string so you don't have to use pluses. So you can just write this, the string like my age is, but when you get to the variable that you want to insert, use $, opening and closing brackets, curly braces, age. And that's the same thing as doing this with the double brackets. So it's called string interpolation. And if I console log string interpolation, they're both the same. So this is a little cleaner than this. It's easier to actually see. Like, okay, my age is, okay, then we got this plus, okay. We have Booleans, which is true, false. We have arrays. Let array 1. Arrays can start with the opening bracket with a closing bracket at the end. So opening, and then it's comma separated values. So like 18 or 17, comma, like 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4, comma 5, comma 6. So it's almost like a list, which it's also known as a list in other languages. All right. And then objects. What's unique about an object?
It's key value pairs.
Yeah.
Yep, it's key value pairs. So to declare an object, let object, and then we do open curly brace followed by closing curly brace. Generally want things to be everything on the other line, and we have the key, and then followed by, I generally put my keys in quotes just for readability. You don't have to do that, but you don't have to do that. So we have key followed by colon and followed by some value, like, you know, this is some value. So objects, key value pairs, arrays are like lists, like comma separated lists. And age 18. And then there's null, N-U-L-L. Null explicitly just says this explicitly. I don't even know how to spell that right now. Explicitly has no value. And then the last one is undefined, which undefined, which is like, this has a value, but it's currently undefined. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the different data types? All right. We can go with, operators. It's just simple console log. Like you can add, subtract. So console, 1 plus 2. You can subtract 1 minus 3. You can multiply like that. Do exponents by doing the double star. Single star is multiply. And then there's, then there's what is known as modulus, which is the percentage sign, which returns the remainder of 4 divided by 3 with a remainder of 1. Does anybody have any questions about, basic arithmetic operators? And then there's logical operators or comparison operators, console log. You know, does 1 equal 2? And it returns a Boolean value, true or false. So we have does equal, we have does not equal. So does 1 not equal 2? True. We can just say is 1 greater than 2? No. 1 less than 2? No. And we can do, just keep going. Greater than or equal, or less than or equal. And then the last two, we have, if you want to compare two values, console log 1 equals like 2, and 4 is greater than 2. So that's like another logical operators. Both of these have to be true in order for this entire thing to be true. Whereas the logical OR, which is known as the double pipes, only one of these has to be true for the entire thing to be true. Does anybody have any questions about that? About the basic operators? All right. Console log, comment that out. Then we have conditional logic. Like these are if-else statements, like if one, so if open bracket or open parentheses, closing parentheses, 1 is less than or equal to 2, that evaluates the true. And then to go into the if statement, into this little block of code, I need to open brackets and curly open brackets and closing brackets. And then anything within here, or if this evaluates the true, then it'll execute whatever block and code is in here. This is true. We can do else. So that's an if statement. We can do an if else statement. So if else, if this evaluates the false, then it automatically jumps into this else statement. Else. This is the else statement. Then you can actually combine these into multiple if else statements. If, else if, and then another conditional statement, 5 equals 6. Then do this. This is the else if statement, followed by a single else statement. This is the end of the if else code block. Does anybody have any questions about if statements, if else statements, anything like that? So it comes into here. If this evaluates the true, it jumps into this one and it skips the rest of them. If this evaluates the false, it jumps down to this second one. If this evaluates the true, then it comes into here, executes this code block. If this evaluates the false and this evaluates the false, it comes down here and just evaluates to that. The difference, so you can do actually two if statements if, A equals B. Console log, this is true. And then if you had like another if statement, C equals D, I'll console log, this is true as well. Just for example, the why if else statements are good is because it goes this way, like it does the initial if statement, then it jumps down to here, then it jumps down to here. If you just did a bunch of if statements, it'll evaluate this one. If this is true, it'll come into here. It'll also evaluate this one. If this equals true, it'll come into here, but it'll only execute which one, either or. So it's always good to use if else statements versus just a bunch of if statements, because the code is going to evaluate. It's going to come into here and check this one, and it's also always going to come in here and check this one as well.
Will it also console log both of those statements?
Yes,
Will
unless
see
you
and output both of those statements.
yeah. So if I had like 1 equals 1 and 2 or 3 equals 3, if I run that, this is true as well. So in your real code, you'd be returning something. So this would be inside of a function. And if you had 2 return statements, like some data, something like data, whichever one, like you can't guarantee that your program will always run this one first before it runs this one. You can't guarantee that. So that's why an if else statement is the optimal way to go. More often than not, it will execute in order but you can't guarantee that the computer will do that. All right. Let's talk about iteration real quick. Whoa. What is iteration? What piece of code do you use to iterate through something multiple times?
Loops. You can do either a for or a while loop.
Yep. For loop or a while loop.
I guess a for each as well.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Technically.
Yeah, technically. There's a bunch of different built-in methods that iterate, but like generally speaking, they're called, most commonly used ones are like for loops. So for iteration or for loops is when you want to repeat a piece of code a number of times until you don't want to anymore, essentially. So it's using the keyword for, open parentheses, closing parentheses. It takes in 3 statements, an initial value of where you want to start, I equals 0, generally, usually pretty common of how it starts. It's not always the case. And then you want, what's the conditional statement of how many times you want this piece of code to run. Say, as long as I is, less than, 5, I want this piece of code. And then after each time the piece of code runs, I want to increase I by 1. And then do open brackets, closing brackets, or open curly braces, closing curly braces. And I can console log. I'm going to do string interpolation, repeating this code I times. So I run that 0 times 1, 2, 3. So it starts at 0. Let's say like this is code has ran. So it's repeating it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's also, can do the same thing, but with a while loop. So let's, initial value equals 0. You say while initial value is less than 5, open brackets, curly bracket, or open curly brace, closing curly brace, I can console log. Instead of I'll do like initial value. But what's unique about a while loop, if I execute this code, what's going to happen as it is? So while initial value equals 0, or while initial value is less than 5, which it currently is, it's currently 0, it's going to run this code. And then it's going to come up here in the while loop. While initial value is less than 5, still 0, it's going to run this. So this is why while loops, generally you'll experience more what is called an infinite loop, which is you're going to execute this in an infinite number of times, and you're going to essentially crash your computer. It's going to use up all the memory in your computer, and it's going to crash. So if I run this, see, it's running. It's running. Like, I don't even know where it's ending. I'm surprised it doesn't stop. So it's like still running. So if I stop it, there it stopped. So generally in while loops, you have to increment initial value by 1 each time. So now if I run that, it runs it 5 times. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. All right. Does anybody have any questions about iterations, for loops, while loops? I just encourage everyone not to forget the syntax with the curly braces, and anything inside of the curly braces is within the for loop right here. And what's nice about REPL is that it's linter. When I hover right next to this closing curly brace, it shows the corresponding opening bracket. So same with here. So it's like anything within there. There's the ending parentheses. There's the beginning parentheses. All right. And then last but not least, let's just talk about functions. What are functions? It's like the cornerstone to every software or computer language.
Functions are blocks of reusable code.
Yep. So blocks are, exactly, I couldn't say it better myself. Blocks are just chunks of reusable code. So like function, there are 2 ways to declare a function. So the function keyword followed by the name you want to give it. So, add to or get some, and then open parentheses, closing parentheses, and I can pass in parameters of what I want to pass into the function to add together. So num1, num2, then open bracket, closing bracket. Then within here, I can just say like return num1 plus num2. And now to execute or invoke a function, you just call getSum, and then open bracket or open parentheses, closing parentheses, and just pass in the 2 arguments. These are known as arguments that you're passing in to the getSum function, and then you'll have access to 5 and 4 corresponding to this specific parameter. Num1 is going to be now the value of 5 going throughout this function. So I run that, there's 9. And then there's another way we can declare a function, which is known as a fat arrow function. And just say like const get sum. It could also be let if you want it to, equals num1, num2, followed by the fat arrow with the equal signs and angle bracket. Followed by open curly bracket, closing or opening and closing curly brace, then return num1 plus num2. It's the same thing. If I run that, still get 9. What questions do you have about functions? All right. I'm going to